So we are holding the second section of the Chumash of Parshas Miketz. And as I promised in the text, very important lesson, very short Chumash today. But I want you guys to, there's one verse in today's lesson that is one of the greatest things you could do in your life. It could be life-changing if we're able to implement. It's not hard. It's very hard. It's not easy. But today is the verse where Yosef, after everything he's been through, after everything his brothers did to him, he literally is not angry at them, and we'll see why. We'll see how he, right? You're going to a therapist, and you're saying, my brothers sold me as a slave. Tell the therapist. And my brothers always hated me, and I was accused of rape incorrectly. And I was thrown into the dungeon for a very long time. Mr. Therapist, what should I do? I'm a messed up person. I look at what I had to deal with in my life. My mother passed away when I was a little kid. Mr. Therapist, what do I do? So we're going to see how Yosef dealt with the terrible pain that he found in his life today. So, but before then, remember, Yosef didn't tell his brothers who he is, and he plotted to have Binyamin arrested in order to see if the other brothers will stick up for Binyamin, because him they sold. So did they change? He wants to find out if the brothers are still the same horrible people that they were when he was a kid, or have the brothers now turned over a new leaf and are they changed people? Here we go, verse 31. Yehuda is telling Joseph, this is what he's saying, Yehuda, who's the leader of the brothers. And we'll come back home to dad without Benjamin. Our father will drop dead. Save us. Our father will live a life of grief. He's going to go down to the grave. He's going to come back home. We're going to come back home. We're not going to have Benjamin. We'll get Shimon back because they let Shimon out of jail. But Benjamin's now arrested, and our father warned us that if you don't come back with Benjamin, I'm a dead man. I can't handle losing already another child after I lost my wife and I lost my other child. It's not going to work. So Yehuda tells Yosef, Yosef, in yesterday's Chumash, finagled this whole thing. Vice Ravid, you asked us if you have a father and a son, and we told you we have a father and another brother. And then we told you, but we can't bring the boy because our father doesn't want it. You made us bring the boy here. Now you're arresting him. Next verse 32. Your servant Yosef, Yehuda saying, me, I took responsibility for the boy. Rashi explains here. Why is Yehuda playing the role? Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt, will wonder, why is Yehuda talking for everyone? Who made you in charge? So Yehuda says, I personally took responsibility when my father said, I'm not sending Binyamin down. I said, I over my dead body, I'm going to take responsibility for this boy, and therefore everybody else are onlookers, but I have skin in the game over here, and I'm connected to him with a curse that if I don't bring him back, I will suffer in this world, and I'll even be cursed in the world to come. That's the kind of commitment I made to my father. So therefore, I'm here, Yosef, confronting you with keeping my younger brother as a slave. I said, Lamar, I told my father, if I don't bring him to you, I will have sinned to my father all the days of my life. I will carry the sin. It will be on my shoulders, my responsibility, and I will be cursed in this world and the world to come if I don't bring him back. So here's the plan. This is what Yehuda tells Yosef. You found Benjamin with a goblet in his bag, and therefore you think he should be arrested, right? That's what you think. So he says, I can't, I see someone's texting me, but you have to unmute yourself if you want to talk, because I can't get text while I'm sharing the screen. Or just wait, write down your question and then save it. We'll be done in a few minutes. He says, he says, here's the deal. Listen what Yehuda is putting forward. Let me take the boy's place. And the boy will go up to his father. And Rashi says, Yehuda told Yosef, I'm better than him. I'm stronger than him. I can be in battle better than him. I'm better service than him. Whatever you need, janitor, officer in the army, whatever you need, Yosef, take me. This is how far they came from selling Yosef to literally giving himself up as a slave to take Binyamin's position. And he says, verse 34, Ki eich ela alavi, how can I go up to dad? And the boy is not with me. How am I going to go back without Binyamin? And how can I see the anguish and the suffering, the misery that my father will go through, that will find my father? And Yosef heard enough. Yosef heard what he needed to hear. This was the turning point. You mean you're not going to sell your brother anymore? You mean you're going to sell yourself as a slave instead of you're going to give yourself up as a slave? The guy's cured. These are not sick people anymore. They're not people that are ready to sell their brothers. They're not jealous people. They're healthy people, my brothers. But Yosef couldn't handle it anymore. Yosef could not bear. He had to tell them, but it was a terrible embarrassment, as Rashi says. You know how embarrassed their brothers are going to be when he breaks the news to them? Guys, I'm Yosef, who you sold as a slave. He didn't want to. Yosef says, get out. Anyone who's not part of the brothers here, get out of the room. Nobody was in the room. It was Yosef and his brothers. That's it. When Yosef let his brothers know the real truth that he is Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt. He wept out loud. Yosef started to cry. And he told his brothers, you should know I am Yosef. You're going to see in a second. He started to cry. But Yishma Mitzrayim, the whole Egypt heard. This was in the front page news. But Yishma Beis Paro heard. Pharaoh hears that Yosef's brothers have come. This is like, could you imagine? These are Yosef's brothers, and he has a whole family, and now we know who this guy is, and like this is like major news. So Vayomer Yosef Elacha, verse 3. Yosef tells his brothers, Ani Yosef, he says, guys, I am Joseph. Ha'oida Vichai, is my dad still alive? Tell me the truth now. A whole time, I don't know, you might have been making up stories. But I want you to know that 17-year-old kid that you sold as a slave, that you were planning on killing, and that's not a slave, that's me. So what did the brothers do? The brothers couldn't respond. They were styled. They were embarrassed. Could you imagine the embarrassment of these 10 brothers, 11 brothers standing there? They sold this guy, and they're in shock and disbelief, and they're just embarrassed. You can imagine how embarrassed these people are. But so Yosef tells his brothers, and Yosef sees, here's the punchline, which is one of the greatest lessons in life, if you could incorporate this in your life. This is the greatest lesson in life, if your person couldn't, one of the greatest that you can, if you could incorporate. But so Yosef sees his brothers are embarrassed, as Rashi says, right? He sees they're in shock. They don't know what to say. They're so embarrassed of what they did to Yosef. So he talks to them in a very sensitive words, and this is what he says. He says, come close to me. Don't stop backing off. Come close. Don't worry. When they came close, I says, I am Yosef. I'm the one that you sold as a slave to go down to Egypt. Now, this is what Yosef says. This is the therapy after going through unbelievable trauma. Don't be sad. And don't be troubled in your eyes. That you sold me. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. It's over. Water under the bridge. Why? Because God sent me to provide food for you. God sent me to provide food for you. You think you sold me because you hated me. It had nothing to do with you. I don't care what you did. I don't care what your intentions are, so on. My suffering in life did not come from you. The whole story had to be because I needed to save the entire world, entire Egypt, and the family I had to save. Because there's going to be, it's 2 years have passed of a terrible drought. Another 5 years, that no one's going to be able to plan. You can't imagine what's going to happen the next 5 years from here. And God said me plan this whole thing out Lasum lechem she'eres, to get you a remnant to save our family, to make a great deliverance in order to save the family. And this is perhaps one of the greatest pieces of Chumash that we need to internalize. When someone does something bad to you, Yosef says it's not that guy who's doing the bad. It's all from Hashem, and Hashem has a plan. And no one in life can hurt you. Nobody in life can hurt you. They may try. But if God doesn't dictate and want exactly that to happen, and perhaps for an amazing reason, it's not going to happen. So here you have a guy who went through perhaps the craziest trauma in life, but he's okay. Because he knows that it's all from Hashem. That is a practical life lesson that I think we can learn. Yes. Any questions or comments on what we just said? Anyone want to jump in? Yeah, David. Schumacher, go ahead.
Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me, but it's...
You could argue, no problem. I'm fine with you arguing.
It's this very lesson today that makes me crazy. Because I can't bring to a conclusion the fact that if Hashem wants whatever to happen whenever, we have to accept that it's through his will. Yet the Holocaust happened. That's why I said don't get mad at me, because it's making me absolutely crazy. I wish there was more clarity from Hashem to us as to the reason why the innocent lives of so many children and people were lost. I don't know. Am I the only one who's confused like this? Do I have a right to be confused? Am I wrong? I don't know. I don't know.
What's the difference between the Holocaust and the story of Yosef? What's one key difference? There's many differences, but I want to get to one point. Besides it being 6 million, 7 million people and tremendous suffering, besides that, what's one key difference?
Well, there's many differences, right? I mean...
But why is it easier to accept Yosef's story than accept the Holocaust story? I'll ask you a question. At the end of the day, at the end of the story, are you okay with Yosef's story?
Yes.
Why? Why are you okay with Yosef's story and you're not okay with the Holocaust? Why?
Well, first and foremost, I'm okay with this story because of the fact that knowing that he was sold, but yet took care of his family.
Exactly. You know why it really was good.
Good came out of it.
Exactly. Oh, perfect. Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to say. The reason you're comfortable with Yosef's story is because you know God's plan, what he really meant and why it was really good. So maybe it's worth it for someone to suffer as a slave and so on in order to save the whole Egypt and to save his whole family.
Right.
So it makes sense to you. The problem with the Holocaust is you have no follow-up to why it's really good.
That's correct. And that's why my brain is racked every time.
And that's why we...
I got a question. Why don't you see the results?
Hold on. Yeah, 1 second. So not always in life, the story's great because you have the good ending. But you can't just accept, that's what's part of being human, you can't just accept the good the stories that Hashem knows what he's doing when you know the ending. We know Hashem has a good ending. We don't know why it's a good ending. But we know Hashem has a good ending. And I agree with you. It's much more challenging. That part is challenging when you don't see the good ending. No question about it.
I mean, Yosef's story is like a wonderful...
It's a movie with a wonderful ending.
It's a wonderful ending. And
the Holocaust is like a movie with a horrible ending.
That's correct.
So the movie ended with a horrible ending and Yosef's story is with a good ending. But the fact is that Hashem did both of them. And one of them we know and one of them we don't know.
Correct.
But we keep on saying Holocaust have a terrible ending. Yeah, I am 100% understand where you're coming from.
One warning of caution: do not defend the Holocaust.
I'm not. No,
okay,
absolutely not. What happened was horrendous and heinous, and I'm the last person to say the Holocaust was good. But some good result came from it. The state of Israel would have never been formed if it wasn't for the Holocaust. The United Nations would have never recognized that the Jewish people need to have a home for themselves for another heinous crime like that to happen. And that by itself is a miracle, because even when the Jewish nation was formed in 1948, 5 Arab nations that were much stronger and much more powerful as far as military power and ammunition, and went and tried to annihilate that Jewish nation that was just born overnight, and the miracle that they prevailed. And if we look at all the wars that happened in Israel, they're all miracles. They're absolute miracles that in 6 days we conquered what we conquered, and all that stuff. Those are miracles. So I understand. It's very painful, the Holocaust. To me, as an Israeli born and lived in Israel and served in the military, the Holocaust is painful, and it's just as painful as hearing that 18-year-old kids are dying because of wars or terror attacks and all that stuff. It's absolutely heinous. But there is some good outcome out of it. Think about it if Israel wasn't here today. If tomorrow we have another Holocaust, where are we all going to run to? We have no place to run because nobody in the world wanted us when we were fugitives from the Holocaust. Nobody. They all turned us back, even the United States.
The problem is, Eyal, just I think if I'm going to sentiment that other people are thinking, it's still not worth it. Like, it's still not understood. It's still not giving clarity that it's worth it for 7 million people to suffer and be tortured like that.
Eyal's making a very good point that if you want to look deep, something good came out of it. But what you just said is my point. Did it take 6 million?
Right.
Why couldn't it have been?
Right. I agree with you. You can wrap your. Sorry. Yeah, David. Go ahead.
I agree with you, David. You can do it with 1,000 people. You can do it with 500 people. The thing is that it happened in history more than once, and it was more than 100,000. You had inquisitions in Spain, and the state of Israel never formed after that or anything like that. It just happened to be that history was like that. Nazis were the worst scum of the earth, and not even worth talking about because they're such a scum. But at least, the comfort of it is at least something came. And we don't know. Maybe that's just meaning that Mashiach is going to come, because until the Jewish people didn't come back to the land of Israel, we know that Mashiach would not come. So if we want to take it to the religious side of things,
I would argue that we don't know.
We're getting closer to Mashiach days. It's just one step closer. We don't know when he comes.
What about saying if it's not good, it's not the end of the story yet? So maybe we don't. What?
Yeah, which tells me.
Maybe David, had you seen, if you met Yosef when he was a administrator of the household before or when he was in jail, and you met him then, you would say the story's not good yet.
That's right. So what it tells me.
The Holocaust, you're looking at the Holocaust now where Shem is in control, but we don't understand it, basically.
So which tells me, the more I think about it, and with what Yael said, and with what you're saying, and with what I keep racking my brain with, is the fact that we in our lifetime may not know.
Correct.
And eventually, when Hashem places us where we're supposed to be, we may find out. We may still not.
We may never know. We may never know.
Right. So okay. So having said that, this was a wonderful story that came to conclusion, and this was a wonderful story that had a happy ending. And I just wish.
What I want to say, David, what does the story bring out to us? What do we see from the story that can be applied everywhere in life? Is that God is the one controlling what happens, and for a specific reason.
Yeah, and it's in its simplistic terms. give your life to Hashem, and whatever path he wants to lead you on, that is the path that you will be led on. And
Exactly.
if you trust in him, knowing that you try to be the best person you can be, hopefully good will
It
come
will be
out.
good. It will eventually be good. Will I know now that it's good? Will I know? No, I don't know, but it will always
Right,
be good.
right.
So the good ending stories teach us that Hashem's in control, and we see why it's good. And the not good ending stories mean it's not the end,
Correct.
or I don't see yet why it's good.
Correct.
But Hashem is in control of everything, and that's the point. Is that in therapy, like when people hurt you, I think that's the key element of a story, is that you should know that if you grew up with parents, stop blaming your parents for the problems you have. You're there because Hashem put you there. So stop blaming the people around you. I see Evan smiling. His parents are on the call, so he's smiling. But stop blaming the parents for your issues. Stop blaming your friends for your issues. Stop blaming every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Stop blaming the president. Half the country's blaming the president for all their issues. Stop blaming other people for your issues. Whatever happens to you, it's Hashem who made it happen, and take responsibility for where you are, because it's not up to other people that could cause you harm.
And Yosef's story also brought me back to something Rabbi Chazanov said to me when I was very badly hurt financially from the former company that I was with. When they decided to hurt me, they used to daven mincha and Ma'ariv every day. And we used to daven, obviously, together. So I just happened to be speaking to him, and I told him I was wrestling with not wanting to go down to daven mincha and Ma'ariv with the owners that put a knife right into my eyes. And he said to me, no, go daven. And I said, I just can't be in the same room with these guys. He said, you're not. You're with Hashem. And this story, this conclusion of Yosef today, helped me bring clarity to myself of davening in the same room as the guys that put the knife in my eyes when I had the issue with them in business. So this was a very great lesson. This whole study that we've been doing over the last week and a half, whatever, it's been a phenomenal lesson. And the conclusion was better than the beginning. So it was
hard.
good.
It's Yosef is hard. It's very hard to hit Yosef's level, but we should try. It's very hard to be at that level to people that you look like they hurt you, to forgive them. But Yosef is unbelievable. That's an amazing level to reach for and try to get there. Awesome. David, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Brad, I see Brad's raising his hand. So nicely, Brad.
Thank you. So two quick things. One, I think I spoke with you in the past that, my grandfather, my great-grandfather owned a factory in Poland. He had money, servants, and all this stuff. He got swindled out of his money, and he took him and his large family in poverty over time to America in order to chase the people who took his money, never caught them. And we ended up, 10 people in one room in a country where they didn't know the language, where Jews weren't welcomed and all this stuff. And it was the best thing in the world because the Holocaust broke out.
Wow.
So I always say that, and this comes from another story, another class you taught where he said, the look from the bottom, you never know where you are in the whole grand scheme of things. So when it comes to, when you talk about the Holocaust and all that, I always think that we don't know what the stakes are. We don't know what the bet being made. So we don't know if we won or we lost because we're still just betting. We're still just gambling. And so just to brush that to the side for a second, the other thing I wanted to say is that whenever we always talk about the Holocaust, it's always very unsettling. It's always very hurtful. It's something we can't grasp, and it's something we can't deal with. And I always think that that's the point, because if we could contextualize it, and if we can get a little bit of like venting from it, a little bit of the intensity off of it, then it loses the impact. It loses, we're supposed to be unsettled by it. We're supposed to be hurt by it. We're supposed to cry when we think of it. We're supposed, so to put it in context and to be okay with it in terms of Hashem being always great and all that, well, it's not supposed to be, we're not supposed to feel okay with it, and by feeling settled with it is almost like it takes away some of the power, some of the pain that we should be feeling when it comes up.
Right. Very powerful. Thank you, Brad. That was very, 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 very powerful. All right, let's move on to Tanya. Thank you, Brad. Let's move on to today's Tanya. So, wow, yesterday was very deep. We'll have to keep it to a few minutes because we have the lunch and learn shortly. But he's going to say, depending on what kind of sin we do, will the quality of the sin will affect how strongly that sin is rooted in this world. And well, I'm just finish this sentence, then I will go back to you. Will affect how strongly the sin is in the world, and then will impact how hard it is to remove it from this world. So depending on what kind of sin we've done, because our whole class is talking about the sitra achra, the unholiness and the animal instinct and the shalosh klippos tzmeis and evil and unholiness and all that stuff. Now we're going to move on to talk about the removing of it and how we fix it. We started talking yesterday how we remedy and fix it. We said about tshuva, a guy who sinned, he can go further than a tzaddik and he can turn his sins into holy things and so on, right? That's what we spoke